Hi, I'm Duncan Meerding. I'm a furniture and lighting designer based in Hobart, which is in Tasmania. Design and involved in making a lot of different furniture and lighting designs which are inspired by the natural environment. And I suppose this is the core of a lot of my designs, both in terms of inspiration but also sort of ethos in terms of the impacts we have upon people and the environment. And I suppose it's quite central to, I suppose, my design identity. Nature's been involved in sort of inspiring the designs. This is particularly the case with things like, say, the crack-log light range, or like the stump design, crack-log light, or crack-log pendant light that are which are in that range, where I've actually physically gotten something that nature's created it and embraced what happens to logs if they're left in the elements, and also embrace something which is often associated with flaws in design and in manufacture, and made that the feature of the design. A bit more industrial designs like the propeller light, which sort of the original sort of form for that came about from me getting like teardrop or petal sort of shapes and twisting them, and that's how I got sort of the form which became about to be the propeller. So even though it's a propeller, it's still got that sort of organic sort of inspiration in terms of the little petals that go in to make the big sort of more industrial sort of design. There's a bit too much in some respects with people sitting behind a computer and coming up with a pretty picture and then getting it made and then it breaks. Sometimes I think having the actual materials in front of you adds a bit of strength to the actual design process, and I think that's sort of one of the strengths from the sort of designer maker traditions that a lot of that some designers have. Having that connection to making also means you have that connection to the actual final object, and for me, I think that's really important. It's important to understand sort of the history of where that object came from and how it was made, and I suppose the morals associated with the manufacture of that item. Design isn't just necessarily drawing something up on a computer. It's also about how does it actually get made. How do you do that so that you can get the most out of the materials, both in terms of an economic perspective, but also an environmental one, which I think is particularly important. So a lot of my designs concentrate on overall form and light going through and around objects rather than intense detailing. That's quite a feature in my design process, and whether that's come about partly because of some subconscious thing of the fact that I'm partially blind. I've got vision sort of concentrated around the peripheries, so around the side of my eyes is where I see the most, so it means that I'll probably pay more attention to lighting or around form in its essence, I suppose, a bit more than hyper detailing. My visual fields are like if you put your fists in front of your face, I see on the outside of that. So in terms of around the outside of the eyes, and I suppose funnily enough, that's where the light our light sensitivity I suppose comes from, and shadows come from, and things like that. And I may not have necessarily admitted this at the beginning, and it's something I probably would have steered away from when I first started my design practice, because I didn't want it to be necessarily a gimmick or something like that. But whether I like it or not, my visual impairment does influence my designs, and I think the designs sort of show that themselves. And in answer to it being a gimmick, it's like whether or not I would have designed it with my vision impairment on or not isn't really the question. It's designed, and for me, the big thing is my work's influenced by my vision impairment. It's not dominated by it. There's a lot of people out there with vision impairments that could do what I'm doing, just given the right life chances and opportunities. Coming up with the design is really important. Taking into account manufacturing in that design process is important, but not necessarily just designing something so that it can be produced by one machine or something. I think form and function should be very much a major part of the brief, not necessarily just how do we make a million of these things. It should be about how do we manufacture something that people really like the look of and really like to use. I think we're finding ourselves in an age where people are involved in a very sterile environment where we've got these very flat touchscreen phones, we've got big high-rise buildings that are made out of concrete and glass and steel, natural fibres and natural things that generally less apparent, especially in cities. And I suppose that's where a lot of those sorts of designs tend to sell a bit more, because people are really wanting that connection. And I feel that myself whenever I go out on a climbing trip, or if I go out for a bushwalk with some mates or something, even if it's just for a short time. I feel like it's quite cathartic's probably not the right word, but quite relaxing. I think there's something primitive in terms of having natural aspects to designs, and we are actually on a tightly balanced ecosystem, which is the Earth, and we do have finite resources. If we destroy it, we have nothing left. Like there's not a plan B.